The three colossal arenas were packed with nearly 10,000 people. Most of them were spectators who were excited to watch the competition. This contest was a platform where only those possessing extraordinary prowess could participate. At the end of the tournament, the top 10 contenders would have the chance to follow Prince Jorah to Terran City and join the ranks of the Imperial Army. Such a feat could help them gain status in the Yarrow Kingdom, possibly even drawing the attention of the Five Spirits sect. As a result, everyone was keen to win. Zane stood firm and waved his sky sword, ready to begin fighting.
Welcome to this year's martial arts competition. Now, here are the rules. We will call 2 numbers at a time, and the corresponding competitors should enter the ring. The winner of that match will enter the next round, where they will face another opponent. The 10 people who win the most rounds shall earn their place to join the ranks of the Imperial Army in Terran City.
Another man stepped onto the stage and announced the numbers for each of the 3 arenas, and then the fights commenced. A young woman in the 6th stage of body tempering stepped into the first ring, not far from where Zane was standing. She held a long, thorny whip as she looked at her opponent, attempting to intimidate him, even though he was twice her size and already at the 7th stage of body tempering. Scars adorned his torso, painting a history of battle and resilience.
Commence the battle!
The combatants saluted each other and then circled the ring. The female fighter tapped her whip lightly against her thigh before gliding forward with light, graceful movements. She swung the long whip around and then lashed out, slapping it against the burly man's side and splitting open his skin. The blow drew blood, but the man didn't even flinch. The woman smiled, assuming she had the upper hand. Just as she was about to continue her attack, the man flung his hand out and grabbed the whip. With a roar, he pulled it toward him, lifting the woman off the ground and throwing her right out of the ring. When she didn't get up after the count, the host announced,
"The winner of this round is contender 176.
Time passed swiftly as the competitors fought round after round in the 3 arenas. Zane was stunned by all the different techniques and weapons he saw, but he was confident that he could defeat most of them with a single strike. By the 15th round, he couldn't find a single person he thought could last even 5 moves against him. As a new round began, the host called out, and a familiar figure walked into the ring. Elora was wearing the same shade of yellow as when he had first met her, and her long hair was tied back, showing off her slender neck. Zane had almost forgotten how beautiful she was, and even from a distance, he caught a certain twinkle in her eye. Zane noticed he wasn't the only one taken by her allure. Murmurs in the crowd spoke of her rare and exquisite beauty. Standing opposite Elora was a rough young man with a beard. His name was Xander, and he sneered at Elora, believing she was no match for him. When she politely introduced herself, he scoffed.
"I cannot remember the names of those who lost to me. This match will be over in a flash."
He stomped his feet and then he rushed toward her, holding out his right hand and shooting waves of energy at her. His mountain-splitting palm technique was swift and violent, but Elora was much quicker. Without skipping a beat, she gracefully dodged his attack, leaving Xander stunned. Clenching his teeth, he continued to chase after her with his arm outstretched, trying to use his favorite technique again. But no matter how he pursued her, or how much power he used, he couldn't get near her. Elora avoided all his strikes, leaving him red in the face and panting with exertion. He felt like Elora was toying with him, so he began hurling insults at her. Up to that point, Elora hadn't shown any emotion, but she wouldn't tolerate someone calling her names and insulting her like that. With a smirk, she flipped her nimble body and landed behind him so quickly that it took him a moment to realize what had happened. When he turned around, she raised her hand and used her autumn wind palm technique. A small cyclone, which was invisible to the naked eye, shot out of her palm and sent Xander flying back several feet. He stepped forward intending to use his mountain-splitting palm technique again, but his palm slammed against hers, causing a thunderous sound to echo through the arena. The impact sent Xander flying back again, and then he landed on the ground with a thud. He clutched his chest as he tried to catch his breath. Moments before he was counted out, he got to his feet, but Alora wasn't going to let him win. Before he could use his technique again, she hit him with such a powerful force that he flew into the audience, knocking him out of the competition.
The winner of this round is contender number 12,
the host announced, taking Alora's hand and holding it up in the air. Zane was impressed as he watched her win the match. He knew Xander was at the 8th stage of body tempering, so Alora must be at a similar stage. Although her attack hadn't looked violent, it had been strategic. Alora had made it look effortless with her elegant movements and flexibility. Zane's admiring thoughts were interrupted by the host, who called out the participant numbers for the following round. When he heard the number 99, he looked down at the paper in his hand and realized it was his turn to fight. He leaped up and walked to the middle of the ring, but on his way, he heard a lot of chatter around him. Someone asked,
"Isn't that Zane Martel? I heard that his energy center was destroyed and he lost his ability to cultivate. I also heard Bram was behind it."
Another man replied,
"Considering he's here and about to fight, I guess he's recovered. But he's only back up to the 6th stage of body tempering though, so what chance does he have? His opponent will wipe the floor with him."
Zane tried his best to ignore the chatter, but they just kept talking.
"Did you hear that he won first place in the Assembly of Stars? And he was only at the 5th stage at that point."
"How is that even possible?"
The first man replied,
"Apparently, he practices the art of sword drawing. It's an extremely mysterious technique, especially if you've never cultivated the way of the sword. But it increases your power immensely. Who knows? He might make it into the top 10 in this competition."
Most of the audience looked at Zane dubiously, thinking he had no chance. Zane ignored them and focused on winning. Yet when he caught sight of Alora's smile, he returned it before refocusing on the ring. The bald monk across from him was introduced as Marco, who was from a faraway place called Stempor. Zane could see the man's muscles flex through his robes, and he spotted a rope tied around his waist.
The 7th stage of body tempering?
He muttered softly as he sized up the man's abilities. Although Marco was only at the 7th stage based on his physical cultivation, he seemed close to entering the 8th. By the looks of it, he could break steel and move boulders. But Zane decided that still wouldn't be enough to withstand 2 moves. Zane didn't think he would even have to use the art of sword drawing or the separation of vital energy against his opponent, and he was confident he would prevail.
"You're no match for me, Marco. Why don't you leave now and spare yourself any embarrassment?"
As he tried his best to persuade Marco to back out before he got hurt, an uproar broke out among the audience. Everyone seemed to think that Zane was the one who would get hurt, so they accused him of being condescending and arrogant.
"You haven't even begun the cleansing of the body stage yet. Do you really think you'll crack the top 10? Just because you bagged the Assembly of Stars doesn't mean squat here."
The crowd laughed and jeered. Someone else yelled,
"He's all bark and no bite."
Quite cocky, aren't you? Let's settle it in the ring.
Zane couldn't argue, so he smiled and nodded. When the referee rang the bell for them to begin, Zane didn't move. Instead, he watched Marco clench his fists, which began to emit a faint bronze glow. As Marco prepared to take his shot, Zane could feel an intense heat on his face. Just before Marco's punch landed, Zane's eyes darkened, swiftly unsheathing the sky sword that glowed silver. The light from the sword intertwined with the light from Marco's fist. As they came into contact, eventually the sword broke through Marco's defenses and slashed his arm. When he saw blood trickling from his arm, Marco realized that Zane had succeeded in striking him. Shocked, he knew that he needed something stronger, and he decided to use his golden bell shield. He clapped his palms together, and the air trembled as a golden light shone out of his body. His veins bulged as he made another attempt to attack Zane using the Fist of the Dragon's Wrath technique. Strands of fine gold shot out of his fists and flew toward Zane, but it had little effect. Zane took a step forward and swung the sky sword at Marco. To everyone's astonishment, the golden bell shield crumbled, leaving Marco vulnerable. Both men froze. The sword was against Marco's neck, and a trickle of blood began seeping from the shallow cut. Marco's eyes were wide with shock, knowing that he had been defeated.
Can't wait for more? Catch the next episode tomorrow. And if you are ready to binge the whole series, download our app now. Tap the link in our bio to start your journey.